Welcome back. This is the last video of 2021. We made it. Congratulations. And we got a special video. We are going to go through all of 2021 and identify the top 6 narcissists of the year. Now, I get it. I haven't interviewed these people. It's just for fun. All those sort of compulsory caveats. Let's get into it. Starting with number 6, we have Republican Senator Ted Cruz. So if you remember back in February of this year, there was a horrible winter storm in Texas. It was unprecedented. They just didn't have the infrastructure to deal with the cold. It was an absolute nightmare. There were power outages, food shortages, water supply was inconsistent. Several people are said to die of hypothermia. It was chaos. And so, of course, the Senator Ted Cruz decided that he could best take care of his constituents from Mexico. So he and his family flew to Cancun. Now, you're not going to believe this, but people didn't take too kindly to that. And when he was at the airport and people were filming him on their phones, he all of a sudden had a change of heart. And so when he was interviewed, he said, "Hey, look, I didn't mean to stay down here. I was flying down here. I was escorting my family to Cancun, and I was going to come right home."
Heat and no power. And yesterday, my daughters asked if they could take a trip with some friends, and Heidi and I agreed, so I flew down with them last night. Dropped them off here, and now I'm headed back to Texas.
Well, shocker for Ted, people interviewed the travel agent, and apparently Ted was planning on spending the entire week in Mexico. That, sir, earned you spot number 6. And in the 5th spot, we have model, actress, cookbook author, and Twitter juggernaut Chrissy Teigen. So this is more about Chrissy's body of work over the last 10 years on Twitter. But this was 2021 was rough for Chrissy because it all came back to bite her. So Chrissy got on Twitter about 10 years ago and developed a reputation for being incredibly transparent, incredibly bold, brash, and ruthless in how she attacked people. And it was all sort of fine, and she was gaining more and more traction, and people liked the bully. But it was very clear that she was a cyber bully. Well, all of a sudden this year, Courtney Stodden came forward and said, "Look, not only is Chrissy attacking me online in front of people, telling me to take a dirt nap, she's privately DMing me and telling me to kill myself." Well, people went back and looked at Chrissy's tweet record and discovered that she had been ruthless in her treatment of Farrah Abraham, Mariah Carey, Avril Lavigne, and others. She was an absolute online monster. So, of course, Chrissy came forward and apologized. She jumped off of Twitter for a while. And then at the end of the year, she watched Squid Game, which was an incredibly popular show on Netflix, about the sort of how difficult it can be to be impoverished, and how these people that were impoverished were willing to do anything, even join a game in which they would be killed, to have a chance at life. And so Chrissy thought, "I know what I'll do. I'll make a lavish party for everybody. We can all act as though we are the impoverished people, even though we're all exceptionally wealthy." Well, that didn't land well and earns Chrissy spot number 5. Now in spot number 4, I feel bad for spot number 4. I'm Italian, they're Italian. They're also incredibly arrogant a-holes. You have former governor Andrew Cuomo and former CNN anchor Chris Cuomo. Now, the fact that they're both former tells you that it was a rough year for them. First, you have Andrew Cuomo, who in 2020 was the future of the Democratic Party. People loved how he had handled COVID. He was on top of it. He was clear, right, direct. He knew what he was doing. Then it comes out that he maybe fudged some of the data. I don't know if it was him or his administration, but all the data wasn't great. Oh, and 11 women came forward and say that he had engaged in some kind of sexual harassment with them. 11's a lot. So he loses his job. Or he's on his way to losing his job. And Chris Cuomo, the, of course, unbiased, objective journalist, says, "Look, I won't cover my brother's case." Now, there's a sort of like the side note caveat that during COVID, Chris Cuomo got COVID, and he did this, what I felt was over the top, I'm going to report from my basement, and I'm really struggling with fever, and I'm so, all this. And then there was all these little murmurs of Chris Cuomo going out in the street and, getting into conflicts with cyclists. So he may not have always been above board, but he says, "Look, I'm above board. I will not report on my brother's, this sexual harassment with my brother." But what he does do is he goes behind everybody's back and he contacts other journalists and says, "Hey, what do you know about the people that are claiming my brother harassed them?" Who are they? What can you tell me about them? And then he called his brother's team and said, hey, here's what I know. Here's how I would advise you to navigate this political or the media environment. So he lost his job. So both brothers are out in spot number 4. And in spot number 3, I have the Capitol rioters. Now you remember these guys, the intellectual juggernauts, that democracy be damned, we're going to save this union. So they are hopped up by Trump's rhetoric, hopped up by groupthink. They burst into the Capitol, burst into the Senate chambers, and then mill about like directionless cattle.
We pay for it. This is our house.
No, this is our chair.
I agree with you, brother, but it's not ours. It belongs to the Vice President of the United States when he's in here. It's not our chair. Look, I love you guys, you're brothers, but we can't be disrespectful.
Don't disrespect. They can steal an election, but we can't sit in their chair.
No, we're not putting up with that either. It's just, look, it's a PR war, okay? You have to understand it's an IO war. We can't lose the IO war.
Just moving around, taking selfies, dressed in costumes, doing the whole thing, really making an impact. Well, they all get arrested. My favorite one was a guy named Jake Angeli. I think that's how you say his name. He's the one with the bullhorns. He had quite a reputation. He was a failed actor, failed voiceover artist, major supporter of QAnon. Well, he goes to jail. Now, Jake, if you remember, he had his shirt off. He's shredded. Jake does not eat regular food, only organic for Jake. And in the jail where they were holding him, he couldn't eat the food there. So you know what we did? He went because he was like, look, I can't eat. I'm going to go on a hunger strike. So what we did is we go, whoa, for Jake here, we move him to a new facility where he can get better food. I kid you not. So is he a narcissist? Raving narcissist. Is he nuts? I think so. But how wrong is he? He throws his shoes stink, and we bend to him and give him organic food. That guy probably eats better than I do. But he's definitely in spot number 3. And in spot number 2, we have British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, if you remember, Ghislaine Maxwell was the girlfriend and then assistant of Jeffrey Epstein, and then eventually turned into a devious sex trafficker and recruiter for him. She used her wealth, her privilege, her experience to find these disenfranchised girls and convince them to go with Epstein wherever he wanted. That meant off to his weird pedophile islands. That meant giving him massages. She would watch them interacting with Epstein. She would take her clothes off. She would engage in some of the abuse. This is an absolute nightmare of a woman. And so you might look at it and go, look, not a narcissist. She's got antisocial personality disorder. She's a sociopath. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be that way. You can be antisocial, and you can be all about you and not recognize your impact on the world around you. Ghislaine was an incredibly insecure, unstable woman that needed a sense of self, needed a rudder in her life, and that rudder was Epstein. I don't think she understood the impact she was having on people around her because it was all about making herself feel stable. And that earns her spot number 2 on the list. And finally, person number 1, Jussie Smollett. To me, this guy is the biggest narcissist of the last 10 years. This guy is an absolute nightmare. He is an actor. At the time, he was famous on that show, Empire. But it wasn't enough for him. So what does he do? He looks around and he notices there's a lot of racial tension in the U.S. So he gets 2 brothers from Nigeria, one of whom he's had a sexual relationship with, and he says, I want you to accost me in the middle of the streets at night, at 2 a.m. in Chicago, and I want you to start yelling MAGA, and I want you to attack me, and we're going to do it right here so the camera catches this angle, and then I'm going to get more and more attention. So he sets it up. He goes through with it. Of course, he calls the cops. He goes into his apartment. He's still wearing a noose around his neck. He's got bleach on his shirt. And he does this whole big woe is me thing. Then goes on and has interview after interview and does a great job playing it up.
You know, there's a level of pride there. We live in a society where, as a gay man, you are considered somehow to be weak. And I'm not weak. I am not weak. And we are, as a people, are not weak. So I can accept that there was pride there. There's also privacy. You know, at the end of the day, look what has happened, you know.
And then the city of Chicago figures out that he has rigged the entire thing. It's a hoax. He made Chicago spend $130,000 in investigations to figure out what had happened in this case. And the question is, does Jussie recognize the impact this has on true victims, right? And the answer is, he doesn't care, he doesn't know, he is an absolute narcissist, totally unaware of his impact on the world around him. It's just all about Jussie. And I said it in my video on this topic, I think he really believes that it happened to him. I think he is so deluded at this point that he actually believes his own lie. So that earns him spot number 1. Now, I am sure I missed someone, so you let me know in the comments who were the worst narcissists of 2021. And I will see you next year.